Hi, and welcome to Mental Matters. I am your host, Chance Dunkel, and I am with my co host, Kristen McQueenie. Today's topic is summer safety and mental health.
Hi, Chance. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too.
Summer safety. Woo, my goodness. That's a loaded topic, I think.
Absolutely, there's many things to be on the lookout for.
So, when we are looking at summer safety, we could be thinking about our physical safety, our emotional safety, more specifically, in this case, our mental safety.
Absolutely, and I think with it being summertime and teens are getting older, they're wanting to go off and do more on their own. It's important for them to know how to navigate their mental health while being outdoors with friends.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And friends are carefully chosen, sometimes not carefully chosen. And sometimes, well, I think sometimes we just run into people we don't want to associate with.
Yeah, and when that happens, we need to be prepared for what to expect and how to regulate what's going through our minds so we don't panic.
Yes, I agree. Panic can send us in an entirely different direction.
Yeah, it we can fight, we can flight, we can freeze, or we can fawn.
Mm, absolutely. Now, I think those are statements that some people might be aware of, and other people might not know what we're talking about. Chance, can you maybe explain a little bit more what those things are?
So their trauma responses, fighting is shown as irritability, anger, aggression, and moving toward someone. Flight is anxiety and fear, panic, avoiding, chronic worry, and perfectionism. Freeze is feeling stuck, feeling immobile, spacing out, dissociating, depression, and shame. And fawn is people pleasing, avoiding conflict, prioritizing others, and having a hard time saying no. It's hard to set boundaries.
Absolutely. And I don't know about you, but as you were reading this, I was thinking to myself, I might want to freeze in some situations, but I might want to fight in other situations.
Yeah, I think it's normal to feel more than one trauma response at a time. Sometimes you want to fight, but you also freeze because you don't know how to fight back. You don't know what that you can say to de-escalate the situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, thinking about safety in our summer and running into friends or running into individuals we're not necessarily wanting to communicate with or wanting to spend time with, there may be some situations that we might need to reevaluate what we're doing.
Absolutely, might need to, look at the situation. Is it safe? Is it healthy? Am I happy? And if it's not matching those things, then we might need to find something else to do. Say we're, on the beach and we run into someone who has caused us trauma in the past and we start to panic. Well, then we're not safe and we're not happy. So we might
Mhm.
need to think, okay, what can we do? How can we get out of the situation?
And I think that's a perfect example. Would it be okay if maybe we kind of role play that out a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And, and or maybe even just talk it out.
Yeah.
We have a beautiful beach here at Presque Isle, and many of those individuals go, it's a free state park. And so you can come and go as you wish, which is beautiful for the community. Yet, a
There,
higher risk of bumping into somebody.
somebody that has caused you trauma, someone who has maybe taken advantage of you or abused you in some form.
Okay.
And if that happens, like how do you get out of that situation?
Mm. So I think that kind of comes down to a little bit of our needs, and we've talked a couple times about needs, and we need to meet ourselves where we're at. We need to be compassionate with ourselves. We need to be able to say, "I'm not healthy right now. I'm not feeling safe." We need to be kind to ourselves first, so that we can make the choices and maybe set some of those personal boundaries with the individual at the beach we're not interested in spending time with.
Yeah. We have to make sure we have to identify the different types of boundaries.
Oh, that's good, Chase. What kind of boundaries are we thinking here?
Well, there's rigid boundaries, there's porous boundaries, and there's healthy boundaries. So a rigid boundary is like avoiding intimacy and not asking for help and has a few close relationships, is also very protective of personal information and sometimes seems detached. Whereas
Mm.
a porous boundary overshares information, has a hard time saying no, is over involved with other people's problems, and dependent on the opinions of others, and accepts of abuse or disrespect.
Oh, no.
Whereas healthy boundaries, they value their own opinions. They don't compromise their values. They don't overshare personal information. They keep it in a healthy amount, and they know what their wants and needs are and can communicate them.
So if we're in this situation at the beach, bumping into someone who has caused us a trauma and they've abused us in the past, having the compassion to say, I'm feeling panicky. I don't want to associate with this person. I don't feel safe. I want to be away from this person. What boundary would you recommend? What kind of a
Well,
boundary would be good in this situation?
I think that's setting a pretty healthy boundary because it's expressing your values, your opinions, and you're not compromising those values for other people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what you want, you know what you need, and you are looking for a way to safely achieve what you want and what you need.
Do you think that everyone is able to do that independently?
I do not. I think some people, don't recognize what they want and what they need, and sometimes they look to others for what they want and what they need.
So that could be where some of those porous boundaries come in, where they're people pleasing. And maybe they're not sure what they need, maybe they're not sure how to go about it. And so they kind of give in and take on other people's boundaries, other people's problems.
Yeah, they want everyone to be happy, and I've struggled with that in the past where I've wanted to keep everyone around me happy, but in order to do that, it's not valuing my own wants and needs. It's not making sure that I'm where I need to be so that way I can be the best person to help other people.
Absolutely. It reminds me a lot about what Maslow talked about in his hierarchy of needs. He had mentioned that there's a couple different levels. We have those physiological needs.
The
Yeah.
food, the water, the warmth, the rest.
Absolutely. And if I go to the beach, I'm looking to meet my rest needs.
Uh,
I definitely want to get some warmth from the sun. I don't know about other people, but
Hearing the waves hit the shore.
absolutely. I might not be drinking that water because it is Lake Erie, but I will definitely take a picnic lunch and I will enjoy my scenery and meet some of my physiological needs.
Mhm.
But I'm also wanting to
Yeah.
meet my safety needs in the beach. So I'm not going to sit too close to the waves. I really don't want my food to get too wet
Or too sandy.
or too sandy. And I might be looking for some shade because I don't necessarily want a sunburn.
Absolutely.
Okay. But I do want to make sure that I'm going someplace where it is designated as a beach for those to visit, like Beach 11 or 6. I
Mhm.
don't think I'm going to park my car on the side of one of the roadways and just climb over the weeds and just hop into Lake Erie.
Yeah. Well, you also, if you're going to be in the water, that's part of safety. You got to make sure there's a lifeguard. Beach 11 does not have a lifeguard.
And those are important things for us to take into consideration when we're thinking about our summer fun.
Mhm.
Okay. And I like to go sometimes by myself. Sometimes I feel safe to go by myself because there are lifeguards at other beaches. Sometimes I want to take a friend.
Yeah. And when you have a friend with you, there's part of belongingness, and there's love needs. There's relationships, there's friends.
Mm. Yes, Maslow has talked about how we need to have people in our life to help us from one phase to another. one section of our life to another as we age.
Yeah.
We need to have those people.
That's part of those psychological needs.
Absolutely. But we don't need all people.
Absolutely. So we need to make sure that when we have people around us, they're respecting our boundaries, we're respecting their boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
They're safe,
Mm-hmm.
and that's important when you're building those relationships, is recognizing, are they going to respect my boundaries? Are they going to respect my needs? Am I going to be able to meet their needs and their boundaries? And if you can't, meet those, then maybe it's not the right relationship for you to form.
And that's so right. We can say no thank you. We can say this just isn't a good fit. This isn't a good relationship. We're great when we fish together, but I don't think it's good for us to cook the fish together.
Yeah, so sometimes it's easier to do certain activities with friends, and then not being able to do other ones with them is okay. It's part of life. You have your friends that you go fishing with. You have your friends that you go to the beach with, but you also have your friends that you cook with. You don't have to intermingle those three.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want to have like a lunch with them, then maybe you go fishing with the friends to catch the fish. You take them home, you clean them, you get it cleaned up. Then your friends come over from the beach or whatever. You fishing your beach friends and your cooking friends. You guys eat together, and then maybe after it's over, you go to the beach with your friends, with your beach friends. There's a way to integrate everybody, but you don't have to all do the same thing together at the same time.
And I think that's a good point. That's a very good point. I know for myself, if I'm going to the beach, I'm not interested in taking somebody who's kind of icky about sand.
And if I'm going fishing, I don't necessarily want to go with someone who is going to be squeamish about worms or taking a fish off a hook, because that's part of the activity.
It is part of the activity. I think that means that it's important for us to be self-aware.
Absolutely. We have to recognize, what we need out of the friendship. And when we're going these places, are these people going to be able to meet those needs? Are we going to be aware that they cannot handle seeing a fish on a hook? And if they're not able to handle that, maybe you don't want to be stressed out about that while you're at the pier.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I noticed in my life, I have some friends that I can crochet with. I have some friends that I could do book clubs with, but they weren't the Afghan friends, the crocheting friends. They didn't cross over unless they were reading a pattern. That was about it. But I've also had scrapbooking friends and family members who really enjoyed taking photographs and creating an album and getting some of their self-esteem needs met, actually, because they had accomplished a task. And so being able to cheer for some of my friends and tell them, hey, you really did a nice job, and could you teach me how to do that? I'd like to try it in my scrapbook.
And I think that's also kind of ties in with self-fulfillment needs. You're fulfilling, what you want to do. You're fulfilling your needs because you're accomplishing something, which brings you a sense of pride. You're proud of yourself because you were able to complete a task, because you're able to encourage your friends to complete this task that they started as well.
I'm big on encouragement. I love to be the cheerleader, I have to admit.
And everyone needs a cheerleader. And if you're able to cheer your friends on in something you enjoy, it's a big, big thing to them, because they're like, wow, they can do it. They're cheering me on in something I enjoy. It's definitely possible. They see that it's possible, and not everyone has someone to show them that. Not everyone has been in a place where they see someone that keeps trying, that doesn't give up.
It does make summer safety very important.
It does.
We need cheerleaders, we need doers, we need helpers, we need protectors. There's so many different roles in our community.
There definitely is. There's, the lifeguards who keep us safe at the beach. There's the Coast Guard who, comes into the water when something's happening. If you have an accident, first responders show up.
Absolutely.
And that is another thing, like, there's definitely opportunities everywhere for people.
Hmm.
They just have to. I know a lot of people are worried about, trying to find a job or trying to find something to do over the summer that keeps them busy, keeps their teens busy.
I
And
think Asbury Woods has offered some of those activities for different age groups.
yeah, and Erie Zoo, the YMCA.
Absolutely. I know the YMCA, I had to admit, once upon a time I was an employee, and it gave me great pride to know that even if a family was struggling financially, they could ask for support, they could ask for some help, and they worked through a process with that family, and they most of the time got a discount. So they could go ahead and participate in different programs, different activities, which of course then also helped them with their change. They were able
Yes.
to be in a safe place, be with safe options, softball, soccer, floor hockey for their children. With some really great opportunities for them to make change, and change is hard,
hmm
you know.
So there's that. There's a pre. There is pre-contemplation, feeling like there's no control over the pain, feeling like there's nothing they can do to get their young ones involved in these things.
That's very hard for a lot of families.
But then, some people step in, and then there's the contemplation, wondering if there's maybe a different way they can manage it, a different way they can get involved. The preparation, there's researching, you know, going in and asking, hey, do you offer discounts for people who do not have the resources to get in?
Absolutely.
Do you know of somewhere that will help finance these things?
Yeah, asking questions gets us a lot of different options, I believe.
Then there's the action, putting it in place, going in, hey, I am someone who does not have the financial means to pay the full membership. Is there any way I can get a discount?
Perfect.
And that's taking control and starting to try different ways.
And
And
that's very important. I think I'd like to pause there for just a second because I'm thinking about how hard those steps alone are. You know, we have to be aware and accept that there's a problem, that there's a boundary, not a boundary, but a barrier,
mm-hmm.
you know?
And I think that comes back to the needs,
Mm,
what we need, how we meet the needs, and the fulfillment of meeting those needs.
absolutely. Absolutely. So, how many total stages are in this stage of change? What do we know?
There's 5. There's the pre-contemplation, which is feeling like there's no control over our pain. There's the contemplation, wondering if there is a different way to manage the pain. There's preparation, which is researching and planning about ways to function without or with pain or help relieve pain. There's action, taking control and starting to try different ways to change the pain. And then there's maintenance, with finan- with controlling on with beneficial changes and learning new strategies.
So, using that example of attending the YMCA, asking for some support, do you have some funds or do you have a discount for somebody who doesn't have a lot of funds? I want my kids to participate in things. That's definitely working through that. And then if they did get a discount, boy oh boy, I'll tell you, I really saw some people become very emotional, very happy, moved that they were going to be able to utilize some facilities and see their kids be in a safe environment with lifeguards for the pool, coaches for activities, family activity nights, basketball things. It was amazing to see how happy and fulfilling those activities were for families.
And I think those activities, like just being able to spend family time, I think that's a big part of the development of a youth.
Mm.
Because when you don't get, time with mom and dad, or you don't get time with, your siblings together, it teaches you how to interact with kids your age. It teaches you how to interact with other peers.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't interact with your siblings at home, you don't know, hey, this is how I'm supposed to be with my friends. This is how I'm supposed to be with other students.
Hmm. And family is our first opportunity to
Develop,
learn, develop, practice things.
practice healthy relationships.
Absolutely. And just because it wasn't healthy on a Wednesday doesn't mean it'll be unhealthy on a Thursday. We always have opportunities. Every day is a new change, every day is a new opportunity. And so when we think of safety, well, yeah, we need it in the summer, but we need it all the time.
Yep, and that's when we come into our pyramid of needs.
Mm-hmm.
We have acceptance, we have compassion, and routine.
Mm. Routine is often something we see at home, as you were saying. You know, we have family time, we have school time, maybe we have chores time.
Bath time, homework,
Mm-hmm.
meals.
Absolutely.
And, being able to do those things with our family, it helps with connection, it helps show us courage.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the end of the day when you are going to bed and you're resetting for the next day.
Absolutely. It's kind of a nice little, a day, one day, 24 hours, it becomes a boundary, a beginning and an end. And some boundaries are built in. You know, breakfast only lasts so long, school only lasts so long, work, you
And
know.
with all that, you get wisdom.
Absolutely. Benefits. I like benefits. They're good.
Yeah,
Heck yeah, man. It's good for my mental health, too.
exactly. It's the same thing with being outdoors, seeing the greenery, getting the fresh air.
Hmm. I think we all have a different place that we like. You know, outdoors can be different for everyone. I have to admit, I grew up on a grape farm. Had a vineyards. Smell of grapes in the fall, folks. Oh, it's amazing smell. And uh, that environment was very, very strong in my youth. But I also learned that there was not just emotional or mental safety, I learned physical safety. I had to be careful and mindful of the equipment I used, of who used the equipment with me, how I took care of the equipment and put it away. Did
Big.
I go out too late or in bad weather?
And all those things are important because if you go out too late, you can't see where you're going. If it's bad weather and you slip, all these things, they're controllable to an extent. You can't control the weather, but you can control if you decide to go out and use farming equipment in the weather. It's accepting what you can control and it's safely achieving what you can.
Absolutely. Safely. Yes, my father had a rule: safety, safety, safety. Only three rules in our house, and they were all the same.
Well, I think is a big point to get across, especially when people are growing up. They want to challenge boundaries. They
They
want to
do.
press buttons and see where their limits are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, that kind of reminds me of how we push our siblings sometimes, or we push our adults in our lives sometimes. Let me go. Let me go. I can do it. I can do it.
I'm witnessing that a lot with my friend's youngest. He's about 4 years old, and he is definitely a boundary pusher. You tell him not to do something, and that's the first thing he wants to do. We
Uh-huh.
were having a fire last night, and for his safety, we told him, "Hey, buddy, don't get any closer to the fire." And what's he do? He goes up and tries to stick his hand in. I'm like, "Nope," pulled him backwards. And I think they're pushing the boundaries, but I also think we need to know when to step in and remove them from dangerous situations.
Absolutely.
But how do we show young people when we're doing it for their own good? That's
Mm.
when we step in and try to enforce these boundaries, enforce these rules, they think we're this bad person. How do we show them we're doing it for their safety?
Mm. Yeah, it's an excellent question. And I can honestly say, as a parent, as a therapist, I can tell you it comes down to education and self awareness. And if we're going to make a mistake, or if we're going to be pushing the boundaries, let's do it in a safe way and let's do it together. Let's learn from every experience that we hear of. Just because the fire was hot and we reached for it, you were there for him and he didn't get hurt. Yet, there are other ways we could teach about how things are affected by fire. Throw a marshmallow in. Hey, buddy, the marshmallow is so hot. Look, we need to be careful. I'm glad that you like the warmth, or I'm glad that you like the color. But let's take a second. If I put this marshmallow in here, the fire is going to eat it up. So education is really important and helping others help themselves.
Well, then, can't that be also used when we're trying to enforce boundaries, say at the beach? We
Absolutely.
we can help our friends by showing them, hey, we need to put this boundary in place, and show them why we need to put it in place.
Mm.
What happens if you go on and engage in this situation with this person? Maybe there's past of what happened. You could say, hey, remember what happened last time? And
Last time the situation wasn't so good when we got together. Maybe we could avoid that outcome again.
yeah,
Yeah. And that's a good point. We're not judging it, we're not arguing about it. We're just looking at the evidence and the facts. What happened last time? What can I learn from that? Do I want to do that again?
and some people will say, well, maybe there'll be a different outcome. And some people will say, no, I don't want to change. I don't want to risk that again.
Absolutely.
And we cannot force anyone to do anything, but we can encourage them to make the best decision for themselves, and we can support them in their decisions and be there when they need us.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have to make sure we're not putting ourselves in jeopardy. We're not, taking away from our needs.
Absolutely. So my concern, though, in situations that I have experienced, is that we're setting a good boundary. We're being supportive of the boundary our friend has set, and then they change their mind and they do the opposite. And now they're in a situation and they're like, "Oh boy, come save me! Come save me!" It happens, and so we have to decide: are we going to save? Or are we going to say, hey, you know what? This is a consequence. You made this choice. I can't get involved. You have to decide how to handle this on your own. Maybe you can call a different resource, but maybe I'm not the resource you need.
Yeah, and maybe we can help them find those resources, but we don't have to be that resource. We can say, I set these boundaries with you. I told you if you made this decision that it's, in danger, it's putting me outside of my safety needs, and I can no longer be a part of it. And they chose to do it. So then, instead of going and helping them, we can send them resources.
Absolutely.
Maybe they went into crisis. We can send a number for crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they need the police station. We can send them that number, but we don't have to go.
No, we don't have to be the rescuer. That's the nice part about our community. There are many resources, and there are many individuals that, as a community, we can pull together. We can keep each other safe. We can keep each other in a position of enjoying the summer, enjoying the activities in Erie, whether it's Waldameer or the beach or Asbury Woods or even one of the trails out at Barron.
Yeah.
Plenty of things that we can enjoy.
Well, there's headwater trails for hiking. There's, the piers for fishing. There's Sarah's campground. There's all these different places where we can enjoy outdoor activities. It's just a matter of going to them. Maybe you just take your kids or family to the woods and you do a little scavenger hunt.
Oh, scavenger hunts were the best.
I know.
Did you ever have a scavenger hunt?
I did. It was in middle school. They took us to the park,
Uh-huh.
and one of the things we had to find was a little salamander. And only 2 teams completed the scavenger hunt. Those things are so hard to find.
I don't know if I'd want to touch a salamander. Would my teammate be able to do it?
They're not as slimy as you may think. They're really
Really?
not.
So I have an assumption and it's not quite accurate, huh?
What's the assumption?
Assumptions that they're slimy.
Yeah, and they're not. They're wet, obviously because they're in water or under damp rocks, but they're not slimy.
Okay. So here all this time I've had this boundary of not touching salamanders because I thought they were slimy. And you gave me some new information and educated me and said not necessarily slimy."
No, they're. Have you ever touched maybe like a lizard?
Okay.
It's
They're not going to eat me, are they?
no.
Okay, so I'm safe around a salamander?
Yeah.
Okay, not like an alligator or crocodile?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, they don't have very sharp teeth at all. I mean, I was nibbled by one and I didn't even feel it. I just looked down and seen it.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like it was a fun scavenger hunt.
Oh, it was.
Mm.
And there was disc golf there too. So I don't know
Oh.
if you know what disc golf is.
I don't know. What's that?
It's like golf, but with frisbees.
With frisbees.
Yep. And you throw it into like a chain link net sort of thing.
Okay. Is that like an Olympic sport or something?
I'm not really sure. I just know that where I grew up, there was disc golf all over the park, and there was a trail that took you to all the little holes.
Okay, so now I'm thinking about how would I be safe while other people are playing disc golf in the same space?
Well, you just, make sure you don't walk in front of the frisbee.
Don't walk in front of the frisbee, folks. Oh, that's a good point. Maybe I won't do that then. Yeah. I think what you're telling me is I sometimes need to just
Pay attention
keep
to your
it
surroundings.
simple. Yeah, keep it simple. Pay attention to my surroundings. Make a choice. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, Chase, this has been a fun time, and I really like this conversation we've been having. This has been great. I do appreciate all of these ins and outs. It's been amazing.
I agree. It's nice having a like-minded person to talk to.
It's always a mental matters enjoyment of mine. Is there anything else that we should think about? Because I know we've had our good conversation about safety and how it can look.
Maybe how to put it in place.
Putting safety in place. Well, I can honestly say one of the best ways to put safety in place is to plan.
So make a plan, like if you go to the beach and you think this person might show up, plan for that. Plan for the ability to still enjoy your time, but maybe enjoy your time elsewhere.
Absolutely. I can go to another beach. I don't have to stay. I don't
Okay.
have to engage with the person.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you had one recommendation for someone who was worried that if they put a boundary in place and it would go south, what would that recommendation be?
Usually remove yourself. Take yourself to a place where there's authority. Whether if you're on Presque Isle, go to the ranger station. Hey, I was on beach 6. I had a confrontation with somebody, and I'm going to sit here because I'm not too comfortable. I'm feeling a little unsafe. Let's talk about it. The rangers are there for help. If it's at Asbury Woods, hey, I'm going to be calling up somebody that I know is going to be paying attention. When maybe it's crisis, maybe it's 911. Maybe it's my best friend who says, yeah, I understand the situation. Why don't we go back to the car? Can you get back to your car? I'll meet you at the car. There are lots of ways that we
Okay.
can keep ourselves safe by planning ahead. Even at school. When we're at school, who is our safe person at school? A lot of times it's the guidance counselor. It's your favorite teacher. It depends.
Well, I'd definitely like to touch more on that in the podcast about school and those resources.
I think that'd be great. Can we pick that up probably the next time, maybe?
Sounds good to me.
All right. All right. Well, I think we have probably covered just about as amazing. I think we've covered a lot of amazing parts of safety. And I think we're in a pretty good place to close out for the day.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me, and be good, be safe, and we'll see you on the next episode.